All right, here we go, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. All right, next up we've got our MENA region, so the Middle East and North Africa region panel discussion. Again, on the same topic, freedom of religion or belief, security, and then the importance of building social cohesion and resilience. So I'm just going to introduce Suzanne Grishman with Mercury 1, and she's going to take it from here. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I wanted to thank Greg and Nadine and Chris Seipel for having me here today to speak on this panel and to lead it. I was so excited to get this opportunity. I've been coming for quite some time to these conferences, and they are extremely educational, and I come back equipped with so much knowledge and information. But I wanted to do a panel specifically about action and solutions and things that we could all take back to whatever communities we belong to and whatever other countries we are living in. So this is really important to be able to take out action items to go back and do things with. So that's my hope, is that everyone here today finds some little morsel, some specific area that speaks to you and your community and your country, that you can go back to your country and implement some ideas to be able to get peaceful coexistence and to have better communities that are working together. So that's my hope for today. I wanted to do a quick introduction on the MENA region. So 10 years ago, ISIS swept through Iraq and Syria, targeting Syriac, Assyrian, Chaldean Christians, Yazidis, and other religious and ethnic minorities for genocide with mass killings, rapes, abduction, sexual enslavement, forced conversion, and other atrocities. They destroyed churches and other religious sites, cemeteries, ancient cultural sites, in addition to infrastructure and homes. ISIS continued to grow with foreign fighters joining local community members to target those that did not support their extremist ideology. At its height, ISIS controlled about a third of Syria and 40% of Iraq, with 7 million people under its control. While the ISIS caliphate was finally destroyed in March of 2019, ISIS members and their ideology remain a threat. We could spend the entire program discussing the events of those terrible years, but instead, we are going to have a conversation with leaders doing some of the most important work on the ground in Iraq and Syria to build inclusive, cohesive societies, the only way to recover from these horrific years and prevent the rise of extremism again. So it is my honor to introduce our first panelist. We have the mayor of Hamdaniya, Isaam Matti. First, I would like to introduce him. He is in the district of Hamdaniya. He was born in Qaraqosh in Hamdaniya, the largest Christian city in Iraq. He was educated at Mosul University and mechanical engineer and worked for Hamdaniya's municipality and public works for 10 years. On August 6, 2014, Hamdaniya was captured by ISIS as they moved through the Nineveh Plains. Because the community was aware of the horrific crimes when ISIS entered Mosul and Sinjar, most of the 60,000 residents fled. Unfortunately, some lost their lives during the invasion. After he fled to France, his house in Qaraqosh was used by ISIS as their headquarters. Hamdaniya was liberated from ISIS in October of 2016, and Isaam Matti was elected mayor in February 2018. The rebuilding of Hamdaniya and Qaraqosh has been one of the most celebrated success stories of the Nineveh Plains. As there was over $135 million in damages, with churches, homes, and infrastructure destroyed, it now is a beautiful community, but it is still facing dangerous threats. So, Mayor. So I understand only 60% of the Christians in Hamdaniya have returned, with 99% of the Muslim population and other religious communities returning after ISIS was driven out of the district. How did you work towards rebuilding an inclusive, cohesive society with such a diverse population, especially after the trauma the community had experienced?
No translate, no, I understand. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I will speak in Arabic so that you must translate. بالتأكيد مثل ما تفضلت السيدة سوزان بعد تحرير مناطق سهل نينوى من تنظيم داعش الإرهابي.
Following the liberation of the plain of Nineveh and Qaraqosh back in 2016,
كانت نسبة تدبير هذه المناطق كبيرة جدا.
The area was seriously destroyed.
وأنا طبعا انتخبت قائم مقام للقضاء وأنا صغير بالعمر.
I was elected as mayor of the province.
وكانت مسؤولية كبيرة.
It was a great responsibility with many challenges.
بالتأكيد بدأت عملية الإعمار من خلال الحكومة المركزية ومنظمات المجتمع المدني.
The reconstruction process started with support from the central government.
وتركزت في مسارين مهمين: الإعمار للمباني وعملية إعادة العلاقات ما بين المكونات.
So priority was given to reconstruct buildings and also to rebuild social relations with neighbors.
لأن العلاقة ما بين المكونات التي تسكن المنطقة واللي هي مجموعة من الشعوب المختلفة دينيا وقوميا كانت عملية جدا معقدة.
So to build relations with the neighboring communities, including different religious and ethnic groups and minorities, was really a real challenge.
وكانت الحكومة المركزية منشغلة جزئيا بتحرير بقية مناطق العراق.
The central government was at that time partly occupied by liberating other areas.
بدأت العودة التدريجية من قبل الأهالي إلى هذه المناطق.
The gradual return of the population began later on.
فكان لمنظمات المجتمع الدولية دور كبير في عملية إعادة الإعمار.
International NGOs had a great role in helping reconstruct the infrastructure.
آلاف الدور المحروقة تم إعادة إعمارها من خلال منظمات المجتمع المدني.
Thousands of scorched homes were rebuilt through the help of these organizations.
بالتعاون مع الحكومة المحلية وبالتعاون مع الكنائس في المنطقة.
In collaboration with the local government and also with the local churches.
ومن ثم ساهمت المنظمات بإعادة البنية التحتية اللي هي الماء والكهرباء والصحة والمدارس.
These organizations also had a great role in helping with reconstructing schools and health centers.
في عام 2019 بدأنا بتلقي الدعم الحكومي. 2019 الدعم الحكومي بدأ.
In 2019 we had support from the central government.
وتم إعادة جميع الدوائر الرسمية إلى العمل.
And all the official facilities were reconstructed.
المنظمات التي عملت هي منظمات أمريكية وفرنسية وألمانية وإيطالية.
So the organizations included American, German, French and other European organizations.
انجزنا حوالي ما يزيد عن 600 مشروع سكني واقتصادي.
We managed to achieve some 600 projects in different fields.
وكل مشروع من هذه المشاريع كان يتضمن العديد من الفقرات لا يسع المجال لذكرها.
And of course, reconstruction of these facilities was really a detailed process for which there is no time to elaborate on.
حاولنا أن نحافظ على عدم التمييز في تقديم كل هذه الخدمات لجميع المكونات.
We tried not to segregate and make differences between the different communities in the area. We treated everybody with equal footing.
بالرغم من أن قسم من هذه المساعدات كانت تصل لشريحة معينة واللي هي المكون المسيحي.
Even though some of the support which we received was directed to certain communities. However, we managed to share these with the other communities for
باعتبارها أموال قادمة من شريحة من المجتمع ومن نفس المكون الديني. باعتبارها أموال قادمة أو مدعومة من قبل شريحة من نفس المكون في دول أخرى. Okay, أوكي. المتبرعين كانوا مسيحيين من خارج العراق.
So the donors were Christians from abroad, from outside Iraq.
لكن احنا كان لدينا رؤية في هذا الموضوع.
But we had our own vision in this regard.
أن هذا الدعم يجب أن يتوزع على جميع المكونات الدينية.
So such support should include all the other communities coexisting with us.
لكي نضمن في المستقبل الحفاظ على اللحمة المجتمعية بين هذه المكونات.
So that we would be able in future to maintain unity and coexistence and tolerance among these communities.
That's wonderful. In September of 2023, there was a horrific fire that devastated the Christian community in Hamdaniya. Many of us read about it. Can you share the details with us and how this affected your community?
كما رأيتم على شاشات التلفاز والعالم كله شاهد المأساة التي حدثت.
As most of you have seen on the channels and TV stations, what happened in the wedding party in Hamdaniya.
طبيعة الحريق كانت فعلا مفاجأة وكارثة لشعبنا.
The incident was quite a surprise and a shock for our community.
كونه حدث خلال حفلة عرس.
Especially when it happened during a wedding party.
تحولت إلى مأساة.
Which turned into a tragedy.
فقدنا حوالي 134 شخص.
We lost about 134 people.
وأكثر من 200 جريح.
And more than 200 injured people.
خلال دقائق.
In a span of minutes.
لا يزال شعبنا غير مقتنع بالتحقيقات التي أجريت في هذا الموضوع.
Our people is still not convinced with the results made by the central government regarding the reasons behind this incident.
ويعتقد أن التحقيق كان غير مهني وغير عملي.
The investigation was not professional and not just.
حيث جاءت نتائج التحقيق بأنه حادث عرضي.
The results show that it was only a casual and not premeditated incident.
لكن سرعة الحريق وانتشاره والعدد الكبير من الضحايا يثير بعض الشكوك في هذا المجال.
But the way the incident happened and the quick manner in which the fire spread all over the place raises doubts as to whether there are some purposeful and immediate intervention by foreign parties.
أيضا تلقى هذا الموضوع اهتمام من قبل رئاسة الوزراء. الموضوع تلقى اهتمام من لدن الحكومة وبرئاسة الوزراء.
This issue was seriously taken by the Prime Minister and the government in Baghdad.
لكن تبين أن لنا عدد كبير من الجرحى يجب معالجتهم خارج البلد.
And it was found out that many of those who were injured had to receive treatment abroad.
هنا أيضا كان لمنظمة المجتمع المدني دور كبير في تقديم الرعاية الطبية.
The NGOs played a great role in providing medical support and care for these people.
أنا شخصيا توجهت إلى الولايات المتحدة.
And I personally went to the United States.
وتمكنت من الحصول على بعض المساعدات في معالجة
And I managed to get financial support to address this situation.
وتم إرسالهم إلى بلدان لديها مستشفيات متخصصة في هذا الموضوع.
And the casualties and injured people were sent abroad to hospitals which had special facilities to help them and to treat them.
لكن حاليا لدينا العديد من اليتامى والأرامل.
But at the moment we have many orphans and widows.
من الذين فقدوا معيلين عائلاتهم.
Those who lost their supporters and beloved ones.
الذين نجوا من هذه الحادثة أيضا متعرضين لحالة نفسية صعبة.
Those who survived have been living in a traumatic situation.
مما اضطرنا إلى فتح مستشفى للعلاج النفسي.
Which required the opening and preparing a hospital, a special hospital to address them.
نحن قدمنا قطعة أرض لبناء هذا المستشفى.
We allocated a plot of land to build this hospital.
ونحاول الآن الحصول على الدعم لبنائه وتدريب الكوادر.
We are now trying to, drawing support for this, for the building of this facility, and to train people who would help these injured people in this area.
واحدة من أخطر النتائج كانت عودة الهجرة. الكثير من العوائل غادرت المنطقة بعد هذا الحريق بسبب تخوفهم من أن يكون مفتعلا.
Consequently, in the aftermath of the incident, many members of the Christian community decided to immigrate to the diaspora, unfortunately.
لذلك نحن بحاجة إلى التشجيع من خلال المجتمع الدولي.
So we desperately need support and encouragement from the international community
لمعالجة الجرحى ومعالجة المرضى النفسيين.
to treat those who are injured and those who are suffering from trauma.
وبناء مركز العلاج النفسي الذي
And
تحدث.
also who need psychological treatment as well.
هذا المركز سيخدم جميع أبناء المنطقة في حالة لا سامح الله وقوع أي كوارث أخرى في المستقبل.
Once this facility is completed, it will provide services to all the people in the area who need such treatment and support.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I know many of us here in the room have been praying for that community. So thank you for sharing that. In July, U.S.-sanctioned Iranian militia leader Ryan Kildani took control of the Nineveh Provincial Council using bribery and coercion. He removed and replaced 15 mayors and directors from office in the Nineveh Plains, including you and other Christian mayors. Fortunately, Prime Minister Sudani put a hold on this action, waiting for the courts to rule. What could this mean for the Christians in Qaraqosh and other minority communities if you and the other mayors are removed?
Yes. طبعا بعد تحرير مناطقنا من تنظيم داعش الإرهابي.
Of course, following the liberation of our areas from the grip of ISIS terrorist group.
شاركت مجموعة من الفصائل الغير النظامية في عملية التحرير.
Some militia groups also took part in the liberation of the area.
لكن للأسف تم استغلال هذا الموضوع.
However, they used this situation.
أن هذه القوات العسكرية شكلت أحزاب سياسية.
In the manner that these groups started to establish political groups.
فخلق وضعا سياسيا جديدا في مناطقنا.
As a result, there was a new political situation on the ground in the area.
حيث تم تهميش الأحزاب الأصيلة التي كانت تمثل شعبنا.
And therefore, all the political parties already that existed in the area were marginalized.
لعدم قدرتها على المنافسة في الانتخابات.
Because they were no match to compete with these influential groups.
كون الجهات السياسية الجديدة التي تشكلت تمتلك المال والنفوذ.
Because they had weapons and authority on the ground.
فتم استعمال المال السياسي والفساد للحصول على المناصب الإدارية والسياسية.
So they used their position and the funds they received to bring about a very difficult situation for other members of the community.
كما تعلمون أن نظام الانتخابات في العراق للأقليات أو للمكونات نظام الكوتا.
As you know, there is a quota for for the ethnic and religious groups.
الذي يضمن مجموعة من المقاعد في البرلمان للمسيحيين واليزيدية.
Which grants only a few seats in the parliament for Christians and Yazidis and other ethnic communities.
هذه الفصائل استحوذت على هذه المقاعد باستخدام المال السياسي والتزوير.
Unfortunately, even these seats were confiscated by these influential militia groups.
فتشكل لدينا مجلس محافظة جديد خلال السنة الماضية.
So throughout the last year, there was a new governorate council.
سيطر عليه هذه الميليشيات.
Which was controlled by these militia groups.
فمن الطبيعي أن يكون لديها طموحات أخرى لتغيير رؤساء الوحدات الإدارية ومدراء الدوائر.
And of course, being in such a situation, they had aspirations to bring about changes in the administrative positions to remove the ones whom they didn't like to.
واتخذت قرار تغيير 20 رئيس وحدة إدارية خلال اجتماعها الأول.
So during their first meeting, they decided to remove some 20 administrative positions from their posts.
هؤلاء 20 رئيس وحدة إدارية هم الذين قاموا بإعمار المناطق بعد تحريرها من تنظيم داعش الإرهابية قبل 7 سنوات.
Despite the fact that it was these 20 mayors in the area who brought about the reconstruction of the infrastructure of the area.
لكن المصالح السياسية والاقتصادية لهذه الأحزاب كانت هي السبب في محاولة تغيير رؤساء الوحدات الإدارية.
Of course, this was because these groups had their own political and other objectives.
ويبدو أن الحكومة العراقية برئاسة دولة رئيس الوزراء محمد الشيع السوداني كان لديه رأي آخر في هذا الموضوع.
Fortunately, the Prime Minister of Iraq had a dissenting view. He had a different attitude towards what was happening in the area.
قدم على إيقاف تنفيذ هذا القرار.
So he halted all these, actions.
نحن أيضا بدورنا قدمنا شكاوي إلى المحكمة الاتحادية كون الجلسة كانت غير قانونية.
We on our part also filed cases and petitions to the court.
هذا الموضوع طبعا خلق نوع من التوتر وعدم الاستقرار ما بين الأهالي.
We did that because there was not any stability among the community in the area.
لأن من شأن هذا الموضوع إذا حدث أن تستحوذ هذه القوى السياسية الجديدة على جميع المرافق الاقتصادية والوظائف العليا في المنطقة.
We had to work hard to prevent this group from controlling the situation in the region.
So, what can everyone here within their own countries do to support you and the people in the Nineveh Plains who want to stay in their homeland and live in peace with all their neighbors?
Okay. لابد هنا أن نتكلم بالأرقام كي نوضح بعض الأمور.
It is important for me to speak in figures and statistics.
كانت أعداد المكون المسيحي حوالي 1.5 مليون في عام 2003 بعد التغيير.
Before the last regime change, the population of the Christian community was 1.5 million.
مئات الآلاف من اليزيديين كانوا يسكنون في سنجار والعديد من القرى ومختلف مدن العراق.
Hundreds of thousands of Yazidi community used to live in the region of Sinjar and other places.
فهنا نشترك نحن الأقليات المسيحيين واليزيدية في مجموعة أعتقد من الأمور يجب أن تتحقق لكي نستطيع العيش في مناطقنا.
So we, with the Yazidi community, had to work out a way or a plan to be able to survive in this situation.
والموضوع كله يتلخص بتمكين هذه المجموعة من الأقليات وتقديم الدعم والإسناد لها لكي تتمكن من البقاء والاستقرار.
This can be summarized in empowering these Christian and Yazidi community, to have a better life and to improve their living conditions.
والدعم والإسناد الذي أتحدث عنه هو في عدة محاور ولكن أهم محورين هما الجانب السياسي والجانب الاقتصادي.
Of course, there was support from different directions, but the political and security situation was a priority.
الآن أعداد المسيحيين واليزيديين قلت إلى حوالي 20 إلى 30% مما كانت عليه.
Now the population has dropped by 20% for the Yazidis and the Christian community.
ماذا نفهم من هذا الموضوع؟
What do we understand of this situation?
غير قادرين للعيش في هذه المناطق بسبب ما يتعرضون له، لا أقول من مكونات أخرى وإنما من أجندات ممكن تكون خارجية.
This is the only explanation for this drop in the population is that these communities are unable to survive in the area, not because of their neighboring communities, but also because of the pressure by influential groups within the Iraqi government. Sorry, within the Iraqi as a country. Yeah.
لذلك نطالب بالتنسيق مع الحكومة العراقية في عدة نقاط سوف أذكر بعض منها.
Therefore, we demand coordination with the Iraqi government in different directions.
أولاً نظام الانتخابات.
The first one of these is the election system.
في العراق هو أعتقد جيد، لكن هناك مشكلة أن الكوتا التي خصصت لهذه المكونات هي مفتوحة ويمكن لأي مواطن سواء كان من خارج هذه المكونات من المسلمين وغير المسلمين التصويت على كوتا المسيحيين والأزيدية.
The challenge comes from the point that this quota, which is given to ethnic minorities and religious minorities, is open for all the other population. So it is quite possible that other voices would be given to certain members to win them over to their side.
وهذا يتيح الفرصة للأحزاب المتنفذة أو التي لديها أجندة معينة للاستحواذ على هذه المقاعد من الكوتا.
So this is a leeway for influential parties to win these seats for their political purposes.
فلذلك أعتقد يجب تشريع قانون يمنع التصويت لمكونات أخرى على مقاعد الكوتا ويقتصر التصويت فقط لهذه المكونات.
So there is a drastic need to pass a law which prevents the way in which elections are carried out by helping these candidates to be elected only by their community members rather than people who are outside these communities.
لكي نحصل على نتائج حقيقية تمثل هذه المكونات.
In this way we can reach real results regarding this situation.
أيضا موضوع آخر عن التمكين لهذه المكونات.
Another issue regarding the empowerment of these communities.
منذ 20 عام يحاول المجتمع الدولي نشر الديمقراطية في الشرق الأوسط.
For the last 20 years, the international community has been trying to support values of democracy in the region.
لكن لم ينجح بذلك إلا في مناطق معينة وبنسبة بسيطة.
But unfortunately, it didn't succeed. It succeeded only in certain areas, but not in all the areas.
والسبب أن هذه الشعوب لا تفهم ما معنى الديمقراطية.
The reason is that people in the area do not understand what democracy means.
لذلك أنا أعتقد أن المجتمع الدولي يجب أن يتوجه إلى بعض من هذه الشعوب التي لديها وعي في موضوع الديمقراطية ويمكن أن تساعد المجتمع الدولي في نشره على أن يقدم لها الدعم والإسناد.
So there is a need for the international community to support those communities who support the values of democracy in the area, so that they can, in their role, they can spread and teach these values to the neighboring communities in the area.
الموضوع الآخر واللي هو موضوع الأمني أيضا.
The other issue is the security situation.
هذه الشعوب فقدت ثقتها بالأجهزة الأمنية والفصائل المتواجدة بالمنطقة.
These groups and communities have lost confidence in the local governments to maintain security in the region.
وأكبر دليل على ذلك هو عدم عودة الإخوة الأزيدية إلى مناطق سنجار وقرى.
What proves this is the inability of the Yazidi community to return back to their homes in Sinjar.
لذلك نحن نعتقد أن الأفضل هو إبعاد هذه الفصائل عن مناطق سهل نينوى.
So one solution would be to remove these militia groups from our areas.
ومنح الفرصة لأبناء المكونات للتطوع والانخراط في صفوف الجيش والشرطة.
And also help the members of the community to volunteer and take part in maintaining the security situation in their areas.
لكي يتمكنوا من حماية نفسهم بأنفسهم.
So that they will be able to protect themselves.
أيضا الدستور العراقي يضمن لهذه المكونات إقامة مناطق ذات إدارة ذاتية.
Such a situation is provided for in the Iraqi constitution. So
وهذه مادة دستورية.
It is a constitutional article
بحاجة إلى تفعيل.
Which needs to be implemented.
لكن للأسف تأخر تنفيذها.
But unfortunately, it hasn't been implemented so far.
لأن المكونات الكبيرة ليس من مصلحتها أن يتم تنفيذ مثل هذه المشاريع.
Because this is against the agendas of the influential political parties.
بحجة أن هذا يعتبر تقسيم للعراق. بحجة
on the pretext that it is going to divide the unity and the integrity of Iraq.
ولهذا ما تحدثت عنه عن عدم فهم الديمقراطية الصحيحة.
And this is why I said, I mean, many people do not understand the values of democracy in the region.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your leadership and for your heart to serve your entire community. Thank you so much. Next, it is my honor to introduce to you Dr. Mirza Dinnayi. Mirza is a 2019 Aurora Prize laureate and founder of the House of Coexistence in Sinjar, Iraq, a special multicultural center for promotion of peace and coexistence in the region. He has worked extensively in de-radicalizing youth, particularly those kidnapped and indoctrinated by ISIS. His efforts focus on rehabilitating Yazidi communities and promoting social inclusion as a tool to prevent future violence. In January, Mirza was awarded the U.S. State Department's International Religious Freedom Award. He continues to be a leading voice for the peace in the region. On August 3rd, 2014, ISIS attacked the Yazidi homeland of Sinjar, killing more than 3,000, executing the older Yazidi women and men. They kidnapped and sold over 7,000 women and girls into sexual slavery, indoctrinated young boys and using them as human shields. About 2,700 girls and children are still missing. ISIS destroyed about 80% of the public infrastructure and 70% of all the homes in Sinjar. Even though very little has been rebuilt, the Iraqi government announced early this year they would close the IDP camps with some 180,000 still displaced in camps in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Mirza, what is the House of Coexistence? Why did you establish such a center in the region in Sinjar, and which role has the center in a post-genocide era?
Thank you very much, Susan. Actually, after I got the Aurora Prize, I was thinking what is important to do for a community that survived genocide and needs to be protected for the future. And therefore, I allocated around 70%, so the price was $1 million. I allocated 70% of the price for building a multicultural house, which is about, although the region is completely neglected, it's just like desert. So I established a house of about 1,200 square meter, cultural house with a big public garden that represents diversity of Iraq. So if you go to the center, you will find in each corner of House of Coexistence one of the symbols of the diversity of Iraq, all ethnicities, religious group. The reason was first to find a framework and to find a platform for the step after the genocide, after the war, to promote peace, to promote coexistence, to seek the values of finding a pathway of living together. And therefore our center is, we are working especially in empowerment of youth, promoting dialogue among societies in the region. We have different programs, especially peace education based on a local approach. For example, peace ecosystem, how we can find a common opportunity in the region for all the diversity of the region, and try to find a way. It is still early to think about complete reconciliation because Iraqi government stuck in a process that they didn't implement transitional justice yet. Unfortunately, this is what we are suffering as minority groups. We still have this feeling that the neighbor community, we know that 95% of Muslims were also victims of the Islamic terrorists, but still those people who didn't engage in ISIS, they should know that the other community, small community, Yazidis, Christian, Shabak, Kakai, they were affected by Islamic radicalism. So therefore, they have to show affairs, in order to start a step of reconciliation, they have to show who, especially it is a tribal area, so they have to show who was engaged in ISIS to bring them to the court, to the justice. Unfortunately, even after 2003, we didn't have in Iraq a proper transitional justice. I was in 2004 and 5 a member of Iraqi reconciliation process at that time, because I was advisor to the Iraqi president for minority affairs. But Iraqi majority and minority is a dilemma that we cannot solve, because unfortunately we do not have this experience with democracy, just like Mr. Isaam said. And we don't have experience. Sometimes if someone apologizes, he felt he's insulted because he's apologizing. And this culture of understanding is not there. So I wanted to, for a House of Coexistence, I wanted to go another pathway for the stabilization of the area, finding a platform, finding a space, an open space. Therefore, we do a lot of dialogues among young people. We do women empowerment. We do some kind of protection for women. We try to find durable solution for IDP, especially women. And we make some networking in the region and try to bring people together without to have a strong influence in which direction. Just opening a dialogue in the region is so important. I think the work is still not done. We need a lot of engagement from international partners, also from the local partner, in order to go forward in that process. It is not easy, because the Sinjar region become, unfortunately, geopolitically a conflict area that we have thousands of obstacles.
Thank you. What are the current challenges that the Yazidi community and other religious minority groups in Iraq are facing nowadays? And what is the voice of those indigenous groups? Why are their voices not heard?
Yeah, so just the first step is, unfortunately, Iraqi constitution. If we start just from the top, Iraqi constitution is so controversial that we had a lot of just like timing bombs within the constitution. Nowadays, if I come to the legislation and the law, we are facing now changing of the personal status law, which is very dangerous for all communities, even the Iraqi community, not only the religious minorities or ethnic minorities. Because changing personal status, or from civil personal status law to a religious and Sharia status law, will make a lot of family problems. The whole family law will be destroyed. If it comes to the situation, real situation of the minority groups in Iraq, I think we have still this conspiracy theory in the mind of the MENA region, the whole Arab countries. When it comes to the rights of minority, they think directly about, they are spying, it is against the unity of our country. So therefore, speaking about minority rights makes some sensitivity within the majority in all governmental and legislative levels. Whenever you speak about that, they think you are just because you are backed by foreign countries or you are spy, and they don't know that it is a dilemma to have a diversity in Iraq, but it is so a nice opportunity. We are a culture of 7,000 years. We know that most of the population in Iraq, they are not the grandsons of those old ancient ethnicities, but anyway, it is a heritage that we should be proud of. So in Iraq, unfortunately, during the establishment of the state Iraq since 1921, and before we were under occupation of Ottoman Empire, but after that, there was not real Iraqi collective identity. So we had all the time either dictatorship or a powerful group, and persecuted another group. So therefore, we do not have this collective identities. So whenever you ask it, to protect the general identity of Iraqi community. So you are facing the same problem, and we know that the most of the Iraqi system now, and Mr. Isaam said those political challenges that the big powers, the big parties that are interfering in the manner of the minority affairs, especially by representing in the parliament or also in the local positions and local authority position. I think this is most of the biggest challenge, and if it comes after the Daesh war and now the conflict in Middle East, we are directly faced by a community, maybe let's say a populistic political community that you are scared to speak about your right. And a small example, the problem is that in our community, if a Christian individual or a Yazidi individual do anything, any mistake, they just distribute the whole mistake to all the population, and therefore we are facing each time the hate speech and hatred. We had an example of someone from the region that Mr. Isaam coming from, who was burning a Holy Quran in Sweden, and people and hatred was against Christian people in Iraq. By the Yazidi community, we were in the last year. We were facing two crises, very dangerous. We were actually monitoring because we have also a monitoring process, a mechanism in our center to monitor the hate speech and hatred. And there was just a misinformation about burning a mosque last year, which was not true. It was a mosque in Diyala, but just 6 Muslim Brotherhood TV channels, including in Qatar and other countries, they podcasted that some Yazidis were burning a mosque, and we had 2.5 million hate speech against Yazidis within 2 months. Last month, August, there was also just like a spontaneous speech from somebody, one of the community leaders in Sinjar, who said whenever Islam exists, there will be genocide in other contexts. And he didn't mean even Prophet Muhammad in anything, but just because someone attacked him, we monitored almost 1 million hate speech and videos and in social medias against Yazidis. So this is give us an example of how fragile the situation is in the region.
Thank you. Sinjar region was during the history a marginalized area in Iraq. Few people heard about it prior, but today it's geopolitically one of the topics that concern the Iraqi government and is a subject of debates with the international community and regional countries. Why? And what should be done by Iraqis and international community in order to solve this dilemma?
Okay, I think I will just shorten it because you have already mentioned some dramatic numbers. So just to be clear, more than 20% of Yazidi community since in last 10 years left the country after the genocide. We have still 65% of the community are in the IDP camp. Almost 300,000 are in the IDP camp. And 150,000 return back to Sinjar area. We have various militia groups who are not directly taking their orders from the Iraqi government in the region, which is making the region more unstable. And we have, to be honest, interfering from both neighbor countries, Turkey and Iran, with their different proxy actors in the region. I think what the international community, and this is what the point that I would like to come in, the international community is obliged, because there are at least 12 countries who have recognized Yazidi genocide, including Germany, including USA and UK. International community is obliged to find a solution for minority groups in Sinjar and in our plain. And the best solution is to establish an international conference. I know that the political situation on the international level is not healthy. We cannot lobby for that, but maybe through such kind of initiative, bringing the voice of those people to the international level, maybe we'll move one of those countries to take the file. So there should be an international conference in cooperation with the Iraq, at least to find a solution. According to the Iraqi constitution, there is this point, this paragraph 125, that gives the opportunity to establish self-administrative regions or autonomous regions. We do not like to put the minorities in a capsule. Just we want to empower them to be productive in the area and to protect them and to establish an international fund for rebuilding the region Sinjar and the other area that was affected by ISIS. I think this is the best solution that international community can do. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Brikene Krasniqi. Brikene has over the last 2 decades of experience in early childhood education as a teacher and is the global director at Hardwired Global. They work in partnership with the Director of Education in Mosul and the Nineveh Plains and Hammurabi Human Rights Organization to provide training to teachers throughout the Nineveh Plains of Iraq in developing lessons that promote pluralism and respect for freedoms of one another for the children in all the classrooms. Hardwired Global's teacher training program is helping communities rebuild their lives and learn how to live together in peace through human rights education programming in the schools of this region. Hardwired works with local partners to establish an educational training model in 40 schools in the region and will promote Iraq's rich pluralistic heritage and the rights and freedoms of all Iraqis that can be replicated both nationally and internationally. PBS show The Good Road recently traveled with Hardwired Global to Mosul and the Nineveh Plains, producing an episode highlighting their work to build social cohesion among the youngest residents in the region. So a quick question for you is, why should education be a priority if we want to be inclusive and have cohesive societies?
Thank you very much for having me today and being able to share about our work. Yes, we believe that education is the key point to really not only reach long-term peace and pluralism, but also to prevent for the future these kind of that goes around in places like we as a Hardwired, it is in our sorry, because English is not my first language, so I need a bit more time. We really want to educate and also to train the leaders who can then do in their own places activities that can do activities for pluralism between the communities with different beliefs. So Hardwire has trained many teachers in numerous countries like Iraq, Kosovo, Jordan, also Morocco and other places. So in these communities where are post-conflict, we know that the challenges are very unique when they want to really build peace and pluralism. But sometimes this community will try to isolate themselves by trying to protect themselves, but this encourages them more to have this kind of approach with misconception, misunderstanding, and bias. So for us, we have seen that in many places where they do call for peace and coexistence together, they lack to see the essential cause of what it is that is making this happening over and over again. So we as a Hardwire, our program is built in such a way that really helps a community to see in deep these problems that might be and address them. And having right-based education, it helps them to really reflect on them. So teachers will embody first the program. They will reflect and have this conceptual mind change first, and then they will be able to replicate this with other teachers and children within the community. We have done studies and we have seen the big impact that our program has had in the community. So that's why we really wanted to continue and to have this even wider place. So until now, we really have seen that it changes the culture within the classrooms, and it builds the resilience between children and students. They do not react anymore with very extremism ideas, but they start to really communicate and discuss those differences that they have.
I was so excited to have you on this panel because I started first doing some of this work in 2003 with the Integrated Education Fund of Ireland. And I was able to see how Ireland changed their culture by having Protestants and Catholics together in school systems. And I do think early childhood education, teaching peaceful coexistence, this is how we're going to change the next generation. So is Hardwired's global network different in other parts of the world that you work? Because I know you also work in Kosovo.
Yes, we do work in Iraq since 2015, and we have started there with a small society of civil leaders, where we have seen the great impact that it has. So then in 2017, after 2019, we have done the research to see the impact that the program had in a place. So we have seen a very significant impact, and then in 2019 to 2021, we established a network of teachers within the Iraq, where they will train many teachers. And in 2022, we have established an agreement with Directorate of Education in Mosul and in Nineveh. So together with our partner, Murabi Human Rights Organization, where 30 directorates were trained, and then they have trained 100 of others, teachers, and 100 of students have gone through the program. Not only this, but in 2023, we have established also another agreement with the Ministry of Education of Kurdistan region government, and there 1,000 teachers were trained through our program when they have been able to implement our program within the students. So our idea is to work from bottom up and from up bottom, so then we can really have everybody included in our program. So working with governments is a part of our plan, but also in the same time working with the community. And our program, it is adaptable in different places, such as Kosovo, where I come from, even though we are post-conflict country for 20 years now, and we still have a lot of problems and a lot of needs to address how we can coexist together and in pluralism. So for us to reconciliate and rebuild communities, it is important because it needs pluralism. Pluralism, it's more deep. It's something that you need to engage in one another's life, in everyday's life. So through Hardwired program, this is achievable, because the way how it's set and how the teachers go through, they have to experience and have this in their mind. For example, in one of the trainings that we had in Kosovo, one of the teachers, after going through this program, was like, oh, I never talked to my child about what happened in our place, because I didn't know how to address the issue of conflict that we had. But now that I have gone through this training, now I understand what is good and how I can approach this. So stories like this we have throughout Kosovo, and sadly, government doesn't have a specific plan how to really address these kind of issues where bias, misunderstanding, and misconceptions are place of the community, and how we can overcome this. So they have requested from Hardwired to come and to cover all schools of Kosovo to have this and work with community there. So doesn't matter what are the complexity of the place. Hardwire really can bring to surface what is the need. So being that politically, religion, ethnicity, gender, we have seen also in Iraq where women were more respected and minorities as well because of this program.
Thank you. I love that it can be duplicated around the world as well. That's just amazing. What can everyone here within their own countries do to support Hardwired Global and specifically your work in Iraq?
Thank you very much. Yes, you can support our work, and if you would like to donate, I would love to talk to you and see the way how we can do that. But also, if you would like to have such a program in your country, in your place, to duplicate it and to see outcome from that, I would love to talk to you, and we can talk more after this panel.
Great. I hope everyone here has found something that's of interest to them that they can duplicate somewhere in their own country, in their own community. We do have one panelist that was not able to be here due to her flight, but she may be here later, Nazira Goriya. So she may come and speak at a later time, and I hope you get to hear from her. But I want to thank you all so much, all the government leaders and the civil society leaders. We can do something to make a difference and take action. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Suzanne, and everybody. That was a great panel. Next, we're going to get into like the final sessions today are under the title "What Needs to Be Done." Suzanne was already asking each of those panelists what needs to be done, and they had great ideas and great advice and guidance on what can be done and how we can help. But we're also going to just open this up. And the first session is going to focus on academic initiatives, and the whole thing is what can be done to increase our impact, because there's been an increasing advocacy over the last 25 years, but things haven't gotten better. The amount of persecution has remained at highest ever levels. So what needs to be done to increase our impact? And so the first session under that title is going to be academic initiatives, and I'm going to call up May Cannon, who is the co-chair of our Global Academic Council. I think Jocelyn Cesari is online on Zoom. And then we have Elizabeth Padromo and Dennis Hoover. I'm going to try it. But
Can you hear me?
There, now you're on.
How many of you had lunch? Did you have lunch?
Everybody.
Oh, come on, more of you ate than that. I'm trying to show you something that we all have in common. Have you heard the word postprandial stupor? Well, you all are in it. I can overcome this. It's seemingly apparent not. Postprandial stupor is when all of the blood rushes to your stomach after you eat and you get tired and you all seem to be. Take a deep breath. I was trying to show you something that we have in common, which is a good and beautiful thing when we're in space like this. So my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. I'm curious, is the co-chair Jocelyn Cesari online? That would be good to know. How many of you were a part of the 2-hour session that we did yesterday launching the Global Academic Council? Only a handful. Maybe you're still having that postprandial stupor. It was almost like a wave. Yes. Okay, well, actually, many of you. We're going to consolidate 2 hours of what we shared yesterday in 15 minutes today. It's going to be the most exciting panel yet, and you will leave energized and stimulated, and your mind will be motivated and compelled to go and make the world a better place. How does that sound? Oh. We're making some progress. Thank you. We were asked to just talk for a minute about where do we go from here and what next steps we can take. And we're really, really grateful to be partnering and to be working alongside the International Religious Freedom Secretariat. So thank you to Nadine and to Greg and to Chris and to all of you, the board, the people whose names I don't know, the man in the corner who is leading the business sector, whose name I will learn soon. I have been traveling for the last month, and I say that if I saw my husband tomorrow, I might not know his name right now. But we're really, really grateful for this work. It's critical work to integrate academia with practitioners. And I'm a bit of an avocational academic. We're each going to take just 1 minute and share a bit of the work each of us does. Because one of the things that's really exciting about this Global Academic Council is we all come from different sectors. But we're talking about the role of international religious freedom. So we have historians, we have religious actors. My PhD is in history. I have a doctorate of ministry in spiritual formation on the question of learning to love your enemy. Because the issue that I work on is Middle East peace. And I didn't think I had any enemies, but if you work on Middle East peace, guess what? You will. Or they will think that you're their enemy. And part of what we want to do is listen to the stories like what we heard yesterday. I went and saw that statue. I didn't know about that memorial until I heard about it yesterday, and I went and saw it last night. And I was so grateful for the stories that we heard in the session yesterday. And then part of our goal in the Academic Council is to also expand the space of multi-narrative stories. I do a lot of work, for example, with Palestinian Christians, and Christians right now in Gaza, Christians in St. Porphyrius Church, and Christians in the Latin Christian church there, who are suffering greatly because of the war that is happening. And so what's it mean for us to create space that is safe, where there is security and where there is protection, where we can advocate for religious freedom, coming from multiple sectors, practitioners, and also academics. And so that's some of the work we hope to do in the year ahead. We're grateful to be partnering with you. I already looked up faith and AI and know like 4 of the people that are leaders on it. And so if I really did. Christopher, no. Benjamin Christian something. See, I don't know my husband's name or anyone else's, but I had components. So if you have academics you want to engage with us, we'll have a network, but we will also be expanding the Global Academic Council. So thank you, and a few of us will be sharing some of the other things we'll be doing in the year ahead. She'll go last.
All right. I'll translate what May said. We ate a lot for lunch, and now everyone wants to take a nap. So I hope I won't put you to sleep. I'm Elizabeth Prodromou. I'm a professor of international relations. I'm trained as a political scientist. I say this because it speaks to what we're trying to accomplish with the Global Academic Council, which is to be cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and in particular to welcome people who are, I would describe as hybrids, and I'm a hybrid. I'm trained as a political scientist. I did a political science PhD at MIT. I worked on religion. People thought I was crazy doing religion at MIT, but I have moved from the academic space to the diplomatic space and also the practitioner space. And so I think for us on the Academic Council, one of the things we're trying to do is encourage, again, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary work, in particular a sensitivity to the importance of understanding history and also understanding who writes history, and that historiography, writing of history, is oftentimes a political project that has huge implications on the things we're all concerned about, which is fostering respect for religious difference and diversity, and for religious freedom, IRF, or FoRB, choose your acronym. A couple of points, because I also ate and I'm a little sleepy, I'm jet lagged. Some of the things that have jumped out as over the last 2 days as part of the Academic Council, the significance of knowledge, how we acquire knowledge, how we share and transmit knowledge, and what we present and what we don't present, what gets said and what doesn't get said. I work on the Eastern Med at the intersection of Orthodox Christianity and Islam, and as somebody who's an Orthodox Christian and also works on Islam, I know oftentimes what is not said is just as important as what is said. So knowledge acquisition, transmission, and in particular for the Academic Council, we want to do good scholarship, good academic research that can lead to smart policy design, good practitioner programming, and also for a younger generation of students, help them understand the pathways they can take out of the academic space into the spaces where we all work today. One of the things we hope to focus on is cultural heritage, and I talked about that yesterday. The significance of cultural heritage, tangible heritage like sites, so it might be mosques or synagogues or temples or churches or libraries or museums. The speakers from Iraq, from the destruction of heritage sites, both worship spaces, but also libraries and museums, okay? These are places that are repositories of memory, of who we all are, of our connectedness to the land, to those who came before us, and also the possibilities for sharing knowledge about where we can be in the future. We also want to talk about intangible heritage, all the practices that go along with those sites. So that might be artisanal crafts, it might be the arts, it might be texts, writing texts, dissecting texts. We heard about that today. So we're going to be focusing on cultural heritage and religious heritage, tangible and intangible. And then just by way of closing, listening this morning to Professor Simonson's Haifa Multi-Religious Forum, I was thinking about how important it would be in those kinds of fora to actually do some of the work at sites. It's hard to hate people when you're in their space that you see is so precious to them. And when you learn about their practices that oftentimes are similar to your practices. And so I think cultural and religious heritage will become really important for the connections between what we're all doing. And then finally, just one thing, we talked a little bit about generations, what I call the 2 Gs, gender and generations. And cultural heritage is that intersecting place of sites, tangible heritage, and practices, intangible, where we oftentimes see the most gender diversity, in particular the inclusion of women and girls, and also generations, cross-generational participation. And I think for all of us in this room, I don't want to, I'm not going to insult anyone as my closing remark, but I think we all tend towards the over 40, let me take 40, the over 40 generation. And I think one of the things we want to do is pull in the under 40s, because we all want to work ourselves out of a job so that the next times that we meet, we'll be celebrating instead of still problematizing. I think that's about it. Oh, one last point, trauma and hope. Sites, cultural heritage, and cultural heritage practices are ways of remembering. They're ways of preventing memoricide, the erasure of peoples. And they're also a way of processing trauma. And they're also a way of building hope. And so I think as academics, we try to do that with our students. As policymakers and practitioners, we try to convince ourselves every day to keep going. And the work that we're going to try to do, I think we'll try to move forward in terms of memory that allows us to process trauma, but to build hope and change lives. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Dennis Hoover, you met me before. I am also, for my sins, a political scientist, but like Elizabeth, I've always worked in a very interdisciplinary way and on the intersections of religion and politics, religion and public life in various sectors. I'm a senior fellow at LINC, Love Your Neighbor Community, also a senior fellow at Institute for Global Engagement, and I'm editor of a journal called The Review of Faith and International Affairs, and I'll circle back and say a bit more about that later. My own research, as I discussed before, has looked a lot at religion and security, also religion and peace building, issues of how evangelical Christianity at a global comparative scale intersects with politics and public life. And most recently, along with Chris Seipel, we've done a lot of writing on the concept of covenantal pluralism, which is, in a way, another way of saying that sustainable environment of religious freedom that we're after in this kind of a discussion. So as for our discussions in the Global Academic Council, I mean, I'm a new member to the council, so these are my initial impressions, but especially after yesterday, there was a lot of discussion of landscaping. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of research on religious freedom. There's existing research out there and data sources, but we're distinctively accenting the positive. Okay, so looking for what existing data sources or research projects are of success, okay? Not just studying failures and violations of religious freedom, but what are the conditions that lead to success? What does success look like in terms of religious freedom? And then so the landscaping project is shaped by that priority. So when we think about literature reviews in different fields, trying to identify what are the best sources for explaining those causal pathways, what leads to success, and what are the gaps then, what's missing. Also mapping in terms of identifying the array of organizations that are active in any given context. So it's thinking about religious freedom, activism, and advocacy, it can be pretty easy to identify, well, these are the religious freedom activist organizations, but when we broaden that aperture to think about what are all the range of organizations that are going to be relevant to building a sustainable environment of religious freedom, some of those organizations may not carry the flag of religious freedom per se. They might even not be religious, right? So we're thinking about that in a broad sense of mapping the organizational terrain. We've also talked about thinking about geographical regions that would be an appropriate focus for case studies, okay? Regions, jurisdictions, and again, thinking about success stories, places that actually enjoy the environment that we're talking about. A lot of existing research kind of works backwards from failure and saying, okay, well, here's a mess. What caused this series of problems? But what about looking at especially unlikely success stories, places that are exemplifying multi-faith collaboration and stability over time, despite the odds. Okay, so you look at those cases and do detailed case studies of how did they get there. So those are exciting projects for me to think about. And then also thinking about the data sources and what the strengths and maybe gaps are in some of those. There are some very large-scale global comparative data sources, and the LINC presentation earlier, we heard about the Pew indices, which are widely used. There's also the Religion and State Project out of Bar Ilan University in Israel. Great, very highly detailed comparative sources, but yeah, so we think about what's missing in the data and how, especially, I'm excited about the LINCS project to think of how do we put together positive indices, what are positive indicators, and developing that into a systematic tool that can be used. So those are some areas in terms of landscaping that I think are exciting. And then in terms of what can be done in the near term, one idea that we've come up with and we'll be rolling out over the next coming year is the journal that I edit, I mentioned earlier, the Review of Faith and International Affairs. And then the Global Academic Council are going to be partnering to do a special issue of that journal. So we'll jointly commission scholars to do landscaping, literature review kinds of analyses in different key topic areas that we've talked about, and then develop those into articles that we'll publish together as a special issue towards the end of next year. And with the support from the Templeton Religion Trust, we'll be able to make that issue entirely open access and hopefully also distribute free copies at a future gathering like this one. So stay tuned.
That's great. Thank you. And Jocelyn is joining us online, and we'll talk about some of our priorities moving forward.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm sorry I could not join you because I'm in Israel and it's quite impossible to get in and out due to the current regional situation. So it's bittersweet for me to be in the distance, knowing all the effort, energy we have put with May and Greg to get this council off the ground. So just a few words about myself. As you can hear from my accent, I was trained in France, both in political science and religious studies. And at the time, it sounded normal to me that you could do both. And so for me, religion has never been only about my own experience. It has always been a serious topic of research. And then I moved into the Anglo-American world, and I realized that, you know, you can talk about religion, even do research about religion, and not knowing much about it, except what you have yourself experienced. And since I've been in the US, my goal has really been to promote a bi-disciplinary approach and take religion not only as an emotional aspect, which is the wrong way when you do research, but as a serious topic of research. And there are religious studies. So it was a great joy for me when I started to talk with May and then Greg, and I thought that the Global Academic Council will be a wonderful place to try at least a bi-disciplinary approach, broadly speaking, meaning social sciences, humanities, history, and the practice of people. And that is the other challenge of the Global Academic Council. And from this perspective, I just want to say one thing, is that most of the work, I'm not saying all the work, but a lot of work on religious freedom is done from an artisan approach, and it's okay, it's right, it's kind of information we also need, but that's not what the Global Academic Council is going to do, not that we're going to ignore partisan position. We have to take this into account because it shapes the reality of people. But we're going to look at the whole spectrum of who is saying what against whom and with which consequences. And I think that in itself, this has not really been done, and not to mention the global, transnational, cross-tradition that we want to adopt instead of focusing only on one area or one religious tradition. So having said that, I want to take the last few minutes to show you the research agenda. So as it has been said several times since yesterday, we are just at the beginning. The council was created last May. And so the point here is not to do again what we did yesterday. So I'm not going to go through the whole slide. I just want to share the main point with you here. Okay. Do you see my slide here, future research agenda, or not? Or is it?
Yes, now we can see it. I mean, it's
better.
Yes, that looks good.
So, based on the principles I just mentioned and that were also said by the colleagues in the room, how do you operate if you don't want to be partisan, if you want to be interdisciplinary? What do you do? First, you look not at people only talking, but also at the structures in which the question of religious freedom become an issue, a political issue. And there are lots of things that can be done on structural violence that have never been done because we usually look at violence only as physical violence. In the case of religion, the most negative and harming kind of violence is structural. Secondly, we don't want to link extremism with physical or political violence and religion. The two can be separated, and sometimes we found more extremism, including religious, among secular actors, including political organization and state. Again, I don't have time here to go into detail, but we want to avoid this taken for granted association between religion, extremism, and violence. And then we're going to pay serious attention to the interaction between state, political institutions, and religious communities. The violence is neither completely into the state or nor completely into the religious community. It's in the history of their interaction. And as much as I work with data and statistics collected here and now, we have to look at the history of that, because there is an history. People are not just operating on their own motivation, and even if they think so, they are built by the blueprint of the past experiences, and they differ greatly if you were born in Iraq or if you were born in Kuala Lumpur, even if you are Muslim. So we talk about cultural heritage. I'm going to skip that. And the last point is really also, if we look at the new generation, which has been mentioned a lot of time, they do not interact or identify with religion the same way than the past generation. There is this whole mediation by social media and new technology. What I know from my research is that, for example, young Muslims are exposed to Islam now, especially in lots of areas where there is no strong institutional communities. They are exposed to Islam through the internet, through social media. So what does it mean for religious freedom? What does it mean for overcoming the structural violence that I was mentioning before? So you see, this is a research agenda. It's pretty ambitious. It will take us a few years, and we hope, besides the cluster group of people, part of the council, that we will extend through a network of different research institutions, especially outside the West. And a thing we want to fight is the Western-centered approach to religious freedom, or as we say in the jargon of my discipline, we want to provincialize the Western understanding, because it has negative effect, again, on explaining or even forecasting or anticipating crises related to religious freedom. So I stop here, and I have followed as much as I could since yesterday, and I'm very happy to be part of this project and very thrilled to what we can do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And I just have one or two quick closing comments. Benjamin, were you very excited about point number 5 and the AI and technology being integrated? I thought that was a great point there. I just wanted to be sure to introduce you to the 2 other members of the Global Academic Council in the room. Pavel Barger, if you would wave, or he was a part of our panel discussion yesterday, associate professor in the Department of Religious Studies in Charles University. I was whispering and asking her where that is, and she said Prague. Okay, good. We did research up here, like in the moment. Be sure to introduce yourself to him, and Dr. Ludovic Lado Tanalu, director of both the Center for Study and Training for Development and the Business School in Chad. And Ludovic, there you are. Nice to meet you. So please greet him as well. If you know of academics who should be of our a broader network, if you know of research, if you know of communities that we should be connected with, please, please, please be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, May. Thank you, Jocelyn from Israel. Thanks, Elizabeth and Dennis. All right, we're going to do another coffee break.